Hey everyone, Coach Brad here. Are you still struggling to achieve the health, energy, and well being that you deserve and desire? If you're ready to end the struggle once and for all, check out my in demand Couch to Healthy 12-week wellness training program. What is Couch to Healthy, you ask? Couch to Healthy is a 12-week wellness transformation program designed to get you off the yo yo cycle once and for all and take back your health, energy, and happiness in a fun, easy, and sustainable manner. With Couch to Healthy, you'll learn how to create a CEO championship mindset for your health, learn healthy eating habits, learn how to exercise using the slow, easy method based on heart rate and age, and more. Be sure and click on the link in the show notes for more information and get it now while the price is still 50% off for a very limited time. Depression and anxiety are serious mental health issues that have gotten a lot more attention in recent years as more and more folks come forward sharing their struggles and victories. My guest today, Josiah Thibodeau, has an incredible story of defying the odds and setting a new standard for his life. His struggles with depression began in high school at the age of 16 and continued until the birth of his daughter at around the age of 30 years old. Along the way, he entertained thoughts of suicide. The question becomes, how was he able to dig his way out and overcome the incredible grip that depression had on his life? And more incredible about his story is that he was able to rise and overcome without expensive therapy or antidepressant medications. In today's episode, we'll take an in depth exploration into his story, how depression nearly cost him everything, and later how he turned it all around to take full responsibility and ownership for his life, the choices he was making, and the thoughts that he allowed to play out in his mind. This is a truly incredible episode that I think everyone, no matter where you are in your journey of life, will get something out of. Josiah offers incredible thoughts for not only overcoming depression and anxiety, but how you or anyone can truly put their best foot forward and live their best life. He is a shining example of transformation, and that no hole is too deep to dig your way out of. His tips, guidance, and advice for transforming your life are sure to resonate with anyone. After 20 plus years of struggling with depression, 10 of those years dealing with suicide, Josiah finally found a way out of the darkness and into the light. He is now working to encourage and motivate others dealing with similar issues by offering guidance and the steps he took to find freedom, peace, and joy in life. He can be reached via his website, www.josiahthibodeau.com. This is an episode you'll want to listen to multiple times. And if you or anyone you know is suffering from mental health issues, please call the mental health toll-free hotline at 1-800-662-HELP. That number again is 1-800-662-4357.
All right, welcome and happy post-Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope everybody had a good holiday season and you ate well, but also, kept a little bit of a balance between the sugars and the carbs and all the healthy stuff. But anyway, welcome to another episode, and I am truly excited to have our guest here today. His name is Josiah, and Josiah, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm always looking for people that have an incredible story and really have something special to share. And we're going to get into your story here momentarily. But for those listening, I want this podcast really, I talk about, having better health and more energy and, living in alignment and that greater happiness. And our guest today, Josiah, is someone that has been through that ring, so to speak, that fire, who has literally turned it around. And when I talk about this idea of, better health, I don't just mean like the physical exercise or diet or, any of that, even though that's part of it. There's definitely a mental component to this. And there are a lot of people on this planet today dealing with depression and anxiety and some of those issues, but it's not a trap. And so, Josiah, you were one of those people, way back when. Oh my gosh, I just had something pop up here. But you were one of those people, 10, 15, 20 years ago that was in the midst of this depression and anxiety, and you
Yeah.
managed to overcome that. So let's go back to the early days with your story. What was going on? And we'll slowly kind of navigate, how you came out of it. And then anyone that's listening right now, I want you to know that depression, anxiety is not a means to the end. There is a way forward. There is a way out of it. So, Josiah, I've talked a lot here. Let's dive into you and your story and take us back 20 years ago, roughly, where you were and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah. So, in the more work that I do on myself, I start to see, how these things are really starting to build even earlier than when I started to really feel the symptoms, of depression and anxiety in little instances here and there along the way. But I think it really started to play out in my life around the age of 16, and it started to kind of develop there. But it wasn't so strong where, it was anything for concern. It was more of like the beginning symptoms of it. Um, Around age 19, that's where it really started to take off and really started to affect me in my life. And that's the first time I really considered committing suicide. Sat there for a good while, going through the pros and cons in my mind of like, should I do this? Should I not do it? And it was a very defining moment of my life of whether I was going to stay here or go to the next plane, whatever that is. So it was kind of scary, very intense. And then, I came out of that a few years later, started feeling a little bit better, but then went back down. And around age 24, I was at another moment where I was, considering suicide. Then age 26, another moment where I was considering suicide. And it wasn't just, I'm sitting thinking about it. I am on the cusp of actually committing the act, and not in a way of, oh, I'm going to do this to try to get some attention or hurt myself. It's all or nothing. And that's a lot of times that's how guys think about it. And I think that's why the guys have a higher statistical, record of actually committing suicide as opposed to women. But I finally got to the point around age 30, when my daughter was born, where that kind of shifted something inside of me and changed how I was thinking. So the suicide ideation went away, but I was still very, very depressed and didn't know how to get out of it. So started doing a little bit of medications, didn't like how that went, and ended up getting into marriage therapy, which I wasn't a big fan of, but started realizing maybe I need therapy for myself. Got into my own therapy. And then I think that's kind of where things really started to transition and move me forward into a place where now I feel like I'm depression free.
Let me ask you, we'll kind of get more into that in a second, but going back to your early years, wow, 19 years, that's or actually 16, that's young. That's basically
Yeah.
in high school. Do you remember like what was going on? Was it like thoughts that you were thinking to yourself, or was it external events going on in your world? Did you have some, I don't know,
Yeah. It was a
traumatic
little bit of both.
experiences or something?
Yeah. There were some traumatic experiences that happened. And I think it was also thoughts of feeling just like I couldn't control my situation or environment or things that I was dealing with. And those things all just kind of started compounding together. And then getting to the point where I really started feeling out of control of being able to just, whether it was in my mind or external environment. I just felt like I couldn't do anything. I was trapped and there was no way out. There was no help. I mean, people were not talking about mental health like they are these days.
Yeah.
There was no YouTube, the internet was just kind of starting to take off. So there wasn't a lot of this information that's out there right now. So it was just, I guess this is life. Everybody feels this way and it sucks. And so I guess we either hang on and struggle through until we get old and die, or we just take time when we end it now when we're young. That was kind of the mentality.
Wow. So what kept you going during those early days? Like what got you out of bed in the morning?
That's the thing with me. I always had energy getting out of bed, working and doing things like that. It was just the mental game. It just felt like it was nonstop. So I didn't have moments, because I would see some of the commercials, people talking about depression, and it was always people in bed or can't get up and like sitting there crying. And so I was like, well, that's not me. I'm not depressed because I'm not exhibiting any of those symptoms. But the older you get and the more information that comes out, you're like, oh yeah, I was extremely depressed. But some of it was just, you got to keep going and live life. And then the reasons, I didn't take my life was thinking about the people who were close to me and how that was going to impact them, because I had been impacted by loss of friends of my own. And just knowing how that felt, like I didn't want to transfer that to somebody else, have my best friend come in and find me, it was like a terrible thought. So
Yeah, I apologize to cut you off, but through suicide, you lost some friends also then, or?
Not suicide, just some other tragic accidents. One of them was pretty traumatic, and the other one, it was traumatic as well, but just very, I don't know, they just kind of haunted me for a while.
And so you mentioned earlier about the birth of your daughter. Was that kind of the turning point for you that says, "Hey, I need to deal with this"? I mean, did you recognize at 30 years old that you were in the midst of depression and that, something needed to change? Was that your turning point, or?
Yeah, it was, I think, a little before she was born. I started kind of tossing around the idea of like, maybe I'm depressed. Maybe that's what this whole issue is. Everything that I'm feeling, everything that I'm thinking is a symptom of depression. But still, there wasn't a lot of people talking about it, information out there that you could easily access. So that's where it started. Then when she was born, that's when things really switched, because now I felt like, okay, I have this little person that I have to care for and take care of, and I don't want to grow up in a world without a father. So that was a big shift.
And so initially, you didn't even realize that you were depressed in some of those stages. I mean, like you said, lack of training, lack of knowledge, lack of education, lack of people talking about depression. You weren't really even sure what was going on then.
Yeah. I just thought, I honestly, for a long time, thought that just everybody felt this way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so
because in the circle that I was in, people didn't talk about it. I feel like the mindset was, well, if you need therapy, there's something really, really wrong with you.
Yeah.
And so nobody would think about, depression as being something that's really wrong with you. But it's so internal as well that, a lot of times you can look at somebody and they're going through extreme depression, but you don't know it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to mention real quick to our listeners, I view therapy, you're exactly right, Josiah. A lot of people view therapy, even still now, like couples therapy or personal therapy, as something is wrong with you. But I view it as a way to keep yourself tuned up and running optimally at your peak optimal level, whatever that is.
Exactly.
We take our cars in to get tuned up all the time, or our computers or laptops or whatever. We don't have a problem with that, but we have a problem with taking ourselves in to get tuned up. So please, if you're listening, therapy, it is a good thing. It's to tune you up. It's to help you. There's nothing wrong with you, or nothing wrong with going to therapy, I should say. So I just want to make that point real quick. So after your daughter was born, I mean, you did some therapy. Did you take medicine? How did you start to come out of this really? And just so the listeners really understand, a pretty deep funk that you were in. Suicide all the times.
Yeah. So I did try medication and I didn't really like it. I think it helped a little bit in the beginning, but eventually I was still in the same spot, feeling the same way. So I got off of the medication. And then my wife and I were going to couples counseling for a little while for our marriage, because our marriage just was in shambles, and really because of me and how I was handling everything. So we tried doing that, and I wasn't invested in it, so it didn't work. It just, it was just something that I was going to try to appease my wife, really. But at one point, it was like, okay, you either need to do this, or we're not going to be together, and you're not going to be with your daughter all the time. And it's just, I think I got to the point where I was like, I need something to change. I can't keep living life this way. I want to be here for my daughter. What do I need to do in order to make that happen? Because if I don't start doing something, I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to want to take my life again. So then I started doing more individual counseling, which that helped because I spoke with somebody, and it was still more towards the marriage rather as opposed to, towards myself and the issues that I'm dealing with.
Okay.
But that really began to help show me the power of therapy or counseling and dealing with, and just individuals as a whole, and the mindset that goes behind it and how you think about things. So it was a good shift, but that was a while ago. And then recently, again, a couple years ago, went back and got into therapy again, because I started thinking, man, there's still so much more that is coming up now that I need to deal with in a way that I don't necessarily know how to deal with on my own.
And a lot of that was being brought into your marriage. Would you say that, and then affecting your marriage?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So again, for folks listening, couples therapy is best, and I'm not a doctor, but I would say couples therapy best starts with the individual.
Exactly.
Individual therapy first, because a lot of issues that we have that we're dealing with, we bring into the marriage. And this is true for the man and the wife, or the couple, same sex, whatever that is. So let me go to your story that you shared on the Facebook post, because you mentioned this idea just a moment ago about mindset. And you slowly started to shift away from like the thoughts, I guess, you didn't want to have, to like more positive. And I don't want to use the acronym positive thinking, because I think that's overrated, but you really started to focus on what you did want to work for your life. Is that true? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I guess more healthy thoughts than unhealthy thoughts that are leading towards life and energy. And so that is part of what started happening. I mean, I started listening and reading, Dr. Joe Dispenza's information, started listening to other individuals like him who are, Tony Robbins, of course, and Lewis Howe, and some of these other people that are online doing podcasts. And so listening to them and how they talked about life started making sense. And I was like, yeah, why am I living this way? Why am I allowing my thoughts and my mind to control my life and how I'm feeling and how I'm living? Why don't I take control of that instead? And, for, I think a lot of people, you feel stuck, like you can't do that. But the truth is, you absolutely can. So I think that's kind of where it started. But that's the other thing, is it starts slow. It's hearing a conversation like this and having a little light bulb, a tiny, tiny light bulb go off in your head saying, oh, okay, wait a second. Maybe I don't have to do that. But then there's still a whole journey that you have to go through in a process of going from where you were to where you want to be.
That's huge. And I like how you said it started with changing your thoughts. You can control your thoughts. I think that's a huge piece. It's an awareness. I think you became aware and then slowly started to change to the healthy. But another part of your journey I want to point out for folks is you kind of started this, 16, you really started to go down the depression hill, for lack of a better term. 30, you kind of started to wake up and come out of it. How old are you now, Josiah, if I can ask that?
About to turn 40.
Okay, so you've been on a 10-year journey. And so the point I want to make is this did not happen overnight.
Exactly.
You've been chipping away at this little teeny bit at a time, day by day, week by week, year by year, right?
Yeah. And I think it could have gone faster had I been more aware and had I had a better understanding that I could take control. I mean, I feel like in the past few years, especially, a lot of this, talk about mental health has really been blossoming. But before that, even when I was 30, there just wasn't the same conversation happening, or wasn't as prolific as it is now. So um, I think I could have cut that time down a little bit, but at the same time, it's how many people are out there who aren't listening to something like this,
Yeah.
and maybe this is going to be the first time that they hear it, and this is their first light bulb moment. And then how do I get the rest of that information to figure out how to get out of what I'm dealing with?
Yeah. Some new buzzwords too in the whole health and wellness community, for lack of a better phrase, are the terms like self-care and self-love. And
Mm-hmm.
that involves really prioritizing yourself first and your mental health. Would you say that's correct? And is that basically what you did then over the last 10 years?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it goes back to kind of what you were talking about with the couples therapy. Like, if you want couples therapy, the best thing to do is start with yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was literally thinking about that, I don't know, a couple nights ago, of if you really want to make your marriage better or the relationship better that you're in, deal with your issues and stop pointing fingers at the other party and saying, you have all the issues, you need to go work on yourself and do this. No, flip it around and look at yourself and say, what do I need to do to change? And I think that is a big part of going through this journey, is really taking the responsibility for where you are in life. Your thoughts, your actions, your feelings, everything that you're going to, you have to take 100% extreme ownership of that in order to be able to move on. Because if you don't, you're going to always push that off to somebody else. You're going to look at your outside circumstances. You're going to look at other people. You're going to look at the things happening to you from an external perspective that says, oh, it's because of this or that or this person that I can't get to where I want to be. So you're just casting blame all the time, rather than going inward and saying, okay, it doesn't matter what these people do. I can't change them. I can't change the circumstances. But what I can change is myself. I can change how I respond. I can change how I think about this. I can change how I act. And so those are all huge things that I think we don't necessarily take into consideration, that this is on me. My life is on me. Nobody's coming to save you. You've got to figure out how to do that yourself and become, your own superhero. You have to find that within you, because it's within you. It's there.
I'm just smiling. I have goosebumps right now. You hit on such a key aspect a moment ago, this idea of taking 100% ownership, 100% responsibility for your life, basically.
Yeah.
Work on your own issues before you get into the couple related issues or something like that. I know a lot of people on a health journey, and me, we struggle until we get to that point. So I want to ask you, is there something specific, or could you tell our listeners, like, how do you finally get to that place where you own your life? You take that 100% responsibility, because so many people are still not doing that. And that's why I call it the yo-yo cycle. They're still on the yo-yo cycle, or they're still struggling, or whatnot. Is there something that you did, or that you could share with our listeners, how you take that ownership?
I think it's hard, because I was on that yo-yo for a long time myself. And I think for me, some of it was honestly a little bit of fear of thinking, oh man, I am the one who's the problem. Like, it's not anybody else. It's me. I'm the problem. I'm the one who is causing all the issues. I'm the one who is creating this mess of my life. And it's hard to come to a place where you can accept that and say that and be okay with it, because it's very, I think it's very uncomfortable, because when you come to that realization and then you start looking back, everything that's happened is essentially your fault. Now, there may be a few things here and there that are out of your control. You can't control a certain thing. You can't control how another person behaves. So if they're behaving poorly against you, that's one thing. But still, you have the ability to maybe move away from that relationship. So you kind of have to go, okay, if I'm in the place where I am right now, It's because of the decisions and the choices that I've made in my life. And that's a hard thing to come to grips with.
It is.
So the sooner that you can come to grips with that, though, the sooner that you can start to get better. And that's one of the things that I am constantly thinking about with this whole idea of the mental health journey, and just health in general, whether it's physical health and working out, is man, I lost my train of thought here.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Go ahead.
Well, let me jump in. Okay. So for folks listening, this is key point. Once you can finally, recognize your situation, become aware of it and own it, that's when your life will start to change. What worked for me, I've and I won't get into my story, but I've certainly dealt with depression and thoughts of suicide, and I was pretty down there for a while. And I think we all go on like a roller coaster. Like I know, Josiah, your journey's probably been like a roller coaster. You've had days where you're really high and then days where you're low, and ultimately it's about finding balance. But what worked for me, what I would say to anyone listening, and maybe you've done this, Josiah, but maybe you haven't recognized it, is that ultimately I chose to be this healthy person, this person that was high on life and healthy and thriving. And that's finally what got me to own my journey, take 100% responsibility, what we were talking about. And Josiah, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
Yeah.
on that, you've decided to become basically a better person, a better husband, a better dad, a better individual, a better member of your society. And I think it's that choice, like you said, once we recognize our decisions and our choices, and we choose exactly what it is we want to be and how we want our life to be, that's when we can get off that yo-yo cycle, whether it's a diet yo-yo cycle, a depression yo-yo cycle, or whatnot. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think it is you making that decision, and that I feel like is really one of the first steps. Is one of the thoughts that I've had is, do you really want to get better? And everybody says, yes, I want to get better. And I was in that same place. So this isn't to, like demean anybody or anything. But if you want to get better, you have to make the decision. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get better. And so that choice is yours. Otherwise, what you'll do, and this is what I did, is I keep wishing and hoping and dreaming and praying and wanting to get better, but I'm not doing anything to move in that direction. So I had to make that choice like you're talking about and just say, okay, what do I have to do then? How do I have to go from where I am now to a place where I feel freedom, where I feel peace and I feel joy and love and happiness in my life? What do I have to do to get there? And that's where it all comes down to, is what is your choice? Are you going to choose to stay where you are? Or are you going to choose to figure out how to move out and move into something better for your life? And I think one of the other things is really having like a reason or purpose to do it. I got to the point where one of the things that really clicked with me was my daughter, thinking about her and thinking about, I don't want her to ever deal with what I'm dealing with. So what do I need to do to shift my mindset and my focus so that if I ever see or sense like she might be starting to go down that road, I can be there for her, unlike anybody was there for me. I felt like I was alone on this journey the entire time. And so that was a big motivator for me, is just thinking, I don't want her to deal with that. I don't want her to have to go through that. But that's, again, another choice for me, So I do think it comes down to your choice and what do you really want for your life.
So when you ask the question, what do I need to do to get to a place of, greater peace and love and fulfillment and happiness? Would you say then ultimately the answer to that question is the choices you make and the decisions you make?
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, that's one of the things you have to constantly be on your thought life and how you think about life in general, how you deal with people. You have to constantly be aware of what you're doing every day, because if you're not, you'll slowly start to just move back into that state of being that you were in previously.
Yeah, and for those that are able to watch the video version of this, you can see Josiah's, face and body language and all that. There's two more exhibits I'm going to point out that he has exhibited along this journey that I want anyone listening to understand. Yeah, the first thing is you need to make a choice, but the second thing is you need to commit to that choice and be determined to get to the end of whatever that choice that you've made is. If you're committed and determined to get to a place of peace and love and happiness, then I always say it's not if you'll get there, it's when you'll get there. It's just a
Exactly.
time. I changed the word, oh, my goal will happen to, oh, it's inevitable that it will happen, you know, based on, having that commitment and that perseverance. And a lot of this journey is, I call it the intangibles, the commitment, the perseverance, the determination, making that choice. But Josiah, you've clearly, I just have goosebumps. I'm just, this has been very powerful for me. Let me start to wrap this up with a couple other questions.
Can I say one more thing real quick?
Wow, absolutely, yeah.
So I think the other thing that will really help is to play the long game. Because I think what happens a lot of times is people get caught up with, oh, I want to get better and I want to get better now.
Mhm.
And I want more money and I want more money now. I want this thing and I want it now. And if you really want to find success in whatever it is that you're doing, you have to play the long game and think long term.
Mhm.
So it's not tomorrow, I'm going to be 100% better. There's a chance you could, spontaneous remissions of, diseases and things like that.
Right.
There's a chance that it could happen. But for most people, it doesn't. And you have to be okay with that. And you have to accept that, you know what, I might be working on this for a couple of years. The thing that matters is that you're working on it, is that you take a step, is that you find a way to begin to move forward. It's reading that book, listening to something like this, going to therapy, whatever it is that you need to start doing, you start taking that step forward with the idea that in the next few years, this is where I want to be. And don't just say, after a week of trying something, well, it's not working, I'm going to give up. Because that's, I think, where a lot of people get trapped. They get stuck in that mentality of, we want this thing right here, right now, rather than saying, this is going to be a journey that I'm going to go on and embark on. And I'm going to be okay taking that journey.
Josiah, you just kind of summed everything up I was going to ask you in my
Okay.
last couple of closing questions. I won't even bother with them because you just said it very beautifully. So I want to leave listeners and for those watching on videos with this final thought. If you have dealt with depression, anxiety, any of these mental health issues, are currently, or someone, first of all, there's no shame in any of this. We're all human. We're all on this journey called life, and it's perfectly okay, and dare I say, perfectly natural to have these, feelings of depression and anxiety, even deep feelings. The difference is that, Josiah made to come out of this, and that I've made in sometimes in my life, is whether you choose to stay there or whether you choose to get out of it. And Josiah, you're a shining example of someone who chose to get out of it and move on to a place of peace and betterment, as you say. You had a powerful motivating factor, your daughter. You were determined and you were committed. Again, so anyone listening, it's making that choice to not stay in that depressed anxiety, to say it's certainly okay to be there, but to move out of it. And I don't want to talk too much either here, but for our listeners, I was about 2 months ago, I was starting to sink back into a deep depression again and anxiety. And I woke up one day and I had to snap and force myself out of it and said, no, I'm not going to let myself go down to this. Let me ask you this one final question, Josiah. Do you ever feel like you get pulled back down a little bit again and you have to snap yourself out of it again, or?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the big things, is constantly being on guard, constantly being aware. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it. He says you're constantly aware of every thought that goes through your mind.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, you let yourself, relax, then what happens is you've created this program that's lasted for, however long. This has been running in me. I think it started even before the age of 16. The program started. Now, the software is running in the background. I didn't get the actual, depression to come out until a little bit later in life, but I was writing the code probably from the age of 13, maybe even a little bit younger. I mean, the more work that I do, the further back that I go, I'm like, man, okay, I probably affected it. I probably affected it. And it's all these little things building up. So that's just, one of the things is constantly being aware of what you're thinking, because there are days where those thoughts come in and I get to choose again whether I'm going to allow myself to think those thoughts or whether I'm going to decide, no, I'm going to move past this. I've beat this. I'm not going to go back to that place and surrender myself to those thoughts and feelings again. I'm not going to do it. So I think that is a huge part, is just you've got to just be on top of your game there. I don't know if it'll ever get to the point, where I don't have to think that way or feel that way. But the more that I learn in life and listen to other people who are successful and achieving things and overcoming, something like this, they're constantly on top of their thoughts and what they do and what they say. So I think it's just a part of life.
I'm the same way. I have to, pay careful attention to my thoughts, or I get sucked down that depression, anxiety hole again. And it's continually focusing on that higher version of myself, that person I want to be, and then feeding thoughts that feed that vision of my highest self. So I am a lean, mean health and wellness machine. We talk about power models and stuff like that. That's another time, but that's one I use. So, well, Josiah, you have said a ton of amazing information today. This has been one of the most powerful podcasts I've done, and I don't say that lightly because I've done some really, really amazing podcasts. I've gotten a ton out of this. For the good of the order, before we sign off, you've already said a lot, but is there any last thing that you would like to say for our listeners?
I'd say the last thing is to know that you can do it.
Yeah. Not only know that you can do it, but that it's absolutely inevitable that you'll get to that place of peace and love when you just keep, persevering. It is a journey. Like you said, you've struggled, I've struggled. It's not an overnight thing unless, a miracle, which do happen. I mean, miracles can happen, but it's something we continue to look at and all of that. So
I think that is a big thing that people really undervalue how strong they are. And so knowing that you have that strength within you, that is, I think, one of the big things, is just trusting that it's there.
Yeah. And ironically, I'm so grateful for you and your journey, because you could be here today to share it with not just me, but with, all the folks that are, here listening and all over the world. So again, for anyone listening, mental health is not something to be ashamed about. Depression therapy is not something to be ashamed or embarrassed about at all. Seek help, seek therapy. You can climb your way out of depression and anxiety. You make that choice. You get committed and determined to be that higher version of you. So, Josiah, thank you so much for being here today. It has been a blessing and honor to have you, and I wish you nothing but the best going forward. I'm sure we'll keep in touch, and
thank you.
Maybe down the road we'll have you back on the podcast. I always love to have people come back. So, and for anyone that has listened here all the way to the end, I always like to say thank you also. And the word of the day is choice. So if you DM me that word choice or email me that word choice, info@trainingwithcoachbrad.com, I will send you my free Walking for Health wellness program. It's valued at well over 500, actually several $1,000s, all the research I put into that. But it's yours completely free. Just DM me on Instagram or Facebook, or email me info@trainingwithcoachbrad.com for being a listener. And it's a 24-day program to help get your health and strength and vitality and energy and all that up and going again. So the word again is choice. And also, if you are listening to this, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Leave me a 5-star review. Josiah, do you have any website or anything like that? I forgot to ask you about that.
So my social handles are all Josiah Thibodeau, and then website is josiahthibodeau.com.
Okay. I will definitely put show notes in there. Do you offer like coaching services or anything like that? Or?
I'm working on putting something together. I'm going to try to do a mindset seminar actually coming up fairly soon. So I'm almost finished, putting that together, and then I'm going to pick a date. So I want to try to hold that. It's going to be free. So people can just feel free to show up and just kind of discuss what it is that you need to do, kind of like what we're doing today, tools that you can use to get out of depression, anxiety, whatever it is that you're dealing with, any type of emotional thing that you might be stuck in.
Well, I'll put your social media handles and your website link on my show notes. And then when you have the date for that, let me know, and I'm happy to push it out on my social media and
Great.
email and all that too. So
Yeah, thanks.
yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. This is Coach Brad. Until next time, I always say, be well, be safe, be happy, eat ice cream. Take care, everyone. Thank you. We'll see you next time.